It was one of those midsummer Sundays when everyone sits around saying, "I drank too much last night." You might have heard it whispered by the parishioners leaving church. Heard it from the lips of the priest himself, struggling with his cuz. Heard it on the golf links and the tennis courts. Heard it in the wildlife preserve, where the leader of the Audubon group was suffering from a terrible hangover. "I drank too much," said Donald Westerhazy at the edge of the Westerhazy's pool. "We all drank too much," said Lucinda Merrill. "It must have been the wine," said Helen Westerhazy. "I drank too much of that claret." The pool, fed by an artesian well with a high iron content, was a pale shade of green. It was a fine day. In the west, there was a massive stand of cumulus cloud, so like a city scene. From a distance, from the bow of an approaching ship, that it might have had a name. Lisbon, Hackensack. The sun was hot. Nettie Merrill sat by the green water, one hand in it, one around a glass of gin. He was a slender man. Seemed to have the special slenderness of youth on, while he was far from young. He had slid down his banister that morning and given the bronzed backside of Aphrodite on the hall table a smack as he jogged toward the smell of coffee in his dining room. He might have been compared to a summer's day, particularly the last hours of one, and while he lacked a tennis racket or a sailback, the impression was definitely one of youth, sport, and clement weather. He had been swimming, and now he was breathing deeply, stertorously, as if he could gulp into his lungs the components of that moment. The heat of the sun, the intenseness of his pleasure, it all seemed to flow into his chest. His own house stood in Bullock Park, 8 miles to the south, where his 4 beautiful daughters would have had their lunch. It might be he playing tennis. Then it occurred to him that by taking a dogleg to the southwest could reach his home by water. He was not a practical joker, nor was he a fool, but his life was not confining, and the delight he took in this thought could not be explained by its suggestion of escape. In his mind, he saw, with a cartographer's eye, a string of swimming pools, a quasi-subterranean stream that curved across the county. He had made a discovery, a contribution to modern geography. He would name the stream Lucinda, after his wife, was determinedly original, and had a vague and modest idea of himself as a legendary figure. The day was beautiful, and it seemed to him that a long swim might enlarge it was and celebrate its beauty. He took off a sweater that was hung over his shoulders and dove in. He had to be embraced and sustained by the light green water seemed not as simple contempt for men who did not hurl themselves into pools. He swam a choppy crawl, breathing either with every other stroke or every fourth stroke. And Kenton, he hoisted somewhere well in the back of his mind the 1-2-1-2 of a flutter kick. Not a serviceable stroke for long distances, but the domestication of swimming. Saddled the sport with some customs, and in this part of the world, a crawl was customary. Much a pleasure as the resumption of a natural condition, and he would have liked to swim without trunks. But this was not possible, considering his project. Himself up on the far curb, he never used the ladder and started across the lawn. When Lucinda asked where he was going, he said he was going to swim home. The only maps and charts he had to go by were remembered or imaginary, but these were clear enough. First, there were the Grants, the Hammers, the Lears, the His Hollands, and he would cross Dittmer Street to the bunkers and come, after a short portage, to the levees, the Welchers, and the public pool in Y. Nettie, Mrs. Graham said, "What a here! Lancaster." Then there were the Hallorans, the Sacks, the Biswangers, the Shirley Abbotts, the Gilmartins, and the Clods. The day was lovely, and that he lived in a world so generously supplied with water seemed like a clemency. Heart was high, and he ran across the grass, making his way home by an uncommon route. Gave him the feeling that he was a pilgrim, an explorer, a man with a destiny, and he knew that he would find friends all along the way. Friends would line the banks during the uproarious reunions. He was able to slip away. He went down to the Lucinda River. He went through a hedge that separated the Westerhazy's land from the Grahams, walked under some flowering apple trees, past the shed that housed their pump and filter, and came out at the Grahams' pool. Marvelous surprise. I've been trying to get you on the phone all morning. Me get you a drink? He saw then, like any explorer, that the hospitable customs and traditions of the natives would have to be handled with diplomacy if he was ever going to reach his destination. He did not want to mystify or seem rude to the Grams, nor did he have time to linger there. He swam the length of their pool and joined them in the sun. A few minutes later, 2 carloads of friends arrived from Connecticut. By the front of the Grams' house, stepped over a thorny hedge, and crossed a vacant